First up is Major General Michael C. McCurry, the Army Aviation Branch Chief and Commanding General, United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence and Fort Novosel. Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired Stanley L. Wood, escorted by Hall of Fame member, CW5 retired Michael R. Gwynn. Chief Warrant Officer 4, Michael Janus, and Chief Warrant Officer 4, retired Chris Janus, for the late Chief Warrant Officer 5, Thomas J. Janus, escorted by Hall of Fame member, General Retired Richard A. Cody. Mrs. Kelly B. Scott, for the late Lieutenant Colonel James A. Scott III, escorted by Hall of Fame member, Brigadier General Retired Rodney Wolf. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the U.S. Army Aviation Hall of Fame Board of Trustees, Command Sergeant Major Retired Todd Glidewell.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of colors by the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment Airborne Color Guard, and remain standing for our national anthem sung by Candace Pipkin, the departure of the colors, a toast, and tonight's invocation.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Honored guests, fellow Hall of Fame inductees, ladies and gentlemen, Welcome to the United States Army Aviation Hall of Fame's 29th induction ceremony. Please charge your glasses and join me in a toast. Here's to our inductees, our armed forces everywhere, particularly those deployed tonight, their families, and to all past, present, and future warriors who protect freedom worldwide. Hear, hear. And now, Chaplain Sonny Moore, please deliver our invocation.
The scripture says, "Blessed is that nation whose God is the Lord, and the people he has chosen for his own inheritance." Bow and pray with me, would you? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings of this day and for this special event tonight. We remember that scripture teaches us that a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. And so we thank you tonight for these aviators whose names will be added to the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. We're grateful for their service, for their sacrifices, for example of their lives as they went the second mile. Lord, we're grateful for their families who supported them through the years, for their superiors and their subordinates who served with them. Lord, we thank you tonight especially for Sergeant Major Gladwell and his committee and for the hard work they do every year to find the right people to put in the Hall of Fame. Father, we thank you tonight for good friends, for good food, for good fellowship. And we make our prayer in our Savior's name. Amen.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your dinner. Tonight we celebrate the 49th anniversary of the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is a real hall located at Fort Novosel, Alabama, where the portraits and citations of inductees document their very valuable contributions to Army aviation. 3 individuals will join those inductees who have made an indelible impact on our branch and indeed upon organic Army aviation since its inception 81 years ago, June 6, 1942. Counting our new inductees, there are 184 people in the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. These people represent a broad spectrum of our community, including 111 officers, 38 warrant officers, 23 enlisted, 9 aviation industry individuals, and 3 government employees. 19 of the members of the Hall of Fame have received the Medal of Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to recognize the President of the Army Aviation Association of America, Tim Crosby. And his guest this evening, General Hogeson. As you know, the Quad A underwrites the cost of the Hall of Fame to include the portraits that actually hang in the hall at Fort Novosel Army Aviation Museum, the production cost of the event, the associated travel and lodging of our inductees and their escort. Thank you, sir. Next, will the trustees of the Hall of Fame please stand to be recognized? And joining them would all of the members of the Hall of Fame please stand. Thank you. Before we begin this evening's inductions, please welcome again the Commanding General of the United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence, Major General Michael C. McCurry. Sir, thank you for joining us here on the stage to assist with our new members' induction into the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. And now it is my privilege to begin the Army Aviation Hall of Fame's 29th induction ceremony. Our Master of Ceremonies since 2017, Mr. David Hartman, the first host of ABC's Good Morning America, is unable to be with us this evening. However, he has provided the voiceover for our inductee videos as he has done the past 10 years. We wish him well, and we hope that he can join us again next year in person in Denver. Our first inductee tonight is Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired Stanley L. Wood. Please direct your attention to the screens.
CW5 Stanley L. Wood was born June 22, 1960, in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. He grew up playing baseball and soccer and learned how to wrestle. He was active in the Boy Scouts and found his true passion was the great outdoors. So he began honing his survival skills right there and then. In the summer of 1978, Stan read The Northwest Passage and Those Devils in Baggy Pants, which inspired him to enlist as an Army Airborne Ranger. He was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment at Fort Lewis, Washington, and learned all about duty, honor, loyalty, teamwork, and above all, selflessness. Rangers Lead the Way became a lifelong personal value. As a Ranger, Wood trained with numerous pilots and developed a passion for aviation that inspired him to become an aviation warrant officer in 1983. He quickly started setting his mark in Army aviation as the honor graduate of his flight class. He next served in the 210th Aviation Battalion at Fort Colby, Panama, where he learned to plan and to operate in austere environments with little external support. Stan quickly learned that many things can and often do go wrong, so he developed a passion for contingency planning, considering everything in depth and developing viable options. Following Panama, and after a short tour with the 5th Special Forces Group Aviation Platoon, Wood successfully assessed for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, SOAR, at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He soon became involved in pioneering a new Black Hawk variant, the MH-60 Direct Action Penetrator, DAP. During Operation Desert Storm in 1991, without external support, Wood rapidly planned, coordinated, and flew under zero illumination only a few feet above the desert against integrated air defenses to lead a rescue of isolated U.S. forces deep inside Iraq, earning a Silver Star for his gallantry under fire. A few years later, in 1993, in Somalia, Wood conducted a daring nighttime resupply mission of isolated ground forces in Mogadishu. He was completely exposed, but Wood held a hover as Rangers dropped ammunition, water, and medical supplies, ensuring that our forces could fight through the night. He demonstrated extraordinary composure under withering enemy fire that riddled his helicopter. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his actions. In 1995, Wood departed the 160th, opting to take his family to Heidelberg, Germany, where he served in the flight detachment supporting the U.S. Army Europe. On one occasion, learning that Pope John Paul II was about to make a surprise visit to Sarajevo, Wood had only an hour to devise a plan, including a deception plan, and rehearse the plans to ensure the Pope's safety. After earning an undergraduate degree in Germany, in Bosnia, Wood spent the last 11 years of his career assigned to a special mission unit, making significant tactical contributions, pursuing personnel indicted for war crimes, and hunting the world's most dangerous terrorists in Afghanistan and Iraq. His extraordinary development of the tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, for surveillance and overwatch directly led to the establishment of an expansive fleet of special operations, airborne intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, ISR platforms. These systems and TTPs provided critical capability to defeat al-Qaeda in Iraq and are still in use today. CW5 Wood culminated his career as the command-selected and inaugural Squadron Command Warrant Officer for his Special Mission Unit, culminating 31 years of Army service. Over the course of his service, Wood spent nearly 7 years on foreign soil. He deployed into combat or imminent danger on over 20 occasions and fought in every major conflict until his retirement in 2009. CW5 Wood is a jump master, master parachutist, military freefall parachutist, and is rated in more than 11 different helicopter variants. He retired with over 7,000 flight hours, including over 1,700 hours in combat or imminent danger, and over 2,200 night vision goggle hours. Upon retirement, CW5 Wood was among the most decorated chief warrant officers in the U.S. Army. In retirement, Stan Wood has continued to lead aviation innovation as a co-founder of Fulcrum Concepts, an aerospace engineering and production company. For his professional dedication as warrior, master planner, leader, and tactical developer, please welcome CW5 Stanley L. Wood, retired, to the Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
Congratulations, sir. Please come forward with your Hall of Fame escort, CW5 retired Mike Quinn. Congratulations, sir.
Just in case. Not too long ago, my mother reminded me of an encounter she had with one of my high school English teachers. His name was Mr. Wheeler. And during that encounter, my mother shared with him that I was going to join the Army and I was intent on becoming an airborne ranger. And for whatever reason, at that point in time, for a reason only known to him, he decided to share with her that most of the inmates that he had known as he taught English up at the federal penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, were Army Rangers. Perhaps his intent was to assure her that in due course I would soon be close to home. My first chosen profession before the Army was to be a mountain man. I love being outdoors, and I read the book Mountain Man and watched the movie Jeremiah Johnson, and I was hooked. I was intent on headed out to the Bob Marshall Wilderness area, and I had a plan devised. I enlisted two high school friends. One had a car, I didn't. Bob Marshall was a long way from Pennsylvania. And after school, we were going to depart and drive out there, put the plan into action. But that plan was met with disaster when my dog alerted my mother to the bag that I had packed and lowered down into the flower bed below my window. No. A few books later, and several more disappointments, none as crushing as man's best friend giving me up, I set upon my path to becoming an airborne ranger. Raid, recon, ambush were the order of the day. And later, after the events that took place in the Desert One during the first rescue attempt of the hostages in Iran, 2nd Ranger Battalion took over that mission as well. And we became airfield seizure dominant people. My time in the Rangers taught me many valuable lessons about being a soldier, about leadership, about learning the basics. And it did set the foundation for my next 26 years in the Army. Most remarkable was having the opportunity to work with so many unique and diverse personalities. Individuals who would go on to do amazing things both in their career in the Army and out of the Army. And I'm pretty sure one or two of them probably ended up learning English from Mr. Wheeler at Lewisburg. A leadership perspective that really made its mark on me, and these are along the lines of things that my parents taught me growing up, but we had an XO, Captain Roverty, a former Marine, and we got a call one day late on a Friday afternoon from battalion that required us to supply soldiers to go to the AHA and pull guard duty all weekend. And he argued very viciously to try and not make that happen, but he lost. And he got off the phone, he turned, he looked at me, and he said, "Sergeant Wood, never forget, this is a people business." So I hope I have lived up to that tasking. The events that set me on my path into aviation were clearly helicopter rides. From the very first time I went to jungle operation training down in Panama, those guys just flew crazy. It was a great time. I was hooked. Later, when I was in Ranger School, shortly after my first year in the Rangers, the Ranger School, we were getting a safety briefing from the pilots before we took a training flight. And they said, "Hey, the Army's looking for aviators." So sort of put my plan into place at that point in time. After I got back from Ranger School, I went and took the test, passed that, started getting my physical together. Everything was going well there. I went to my platoon sergeant to tell him, "Hey, here's my plan." And he informed me at that point in time, "Hey, we're going to make you a team leader." Well, how could I give up my aviation dream when I could be a team leader in the Ranger Squad? So I hung in there, put those plans on hold, and went on for a little bit, but decided I was going to re-engage the plan. Next time they came out, they're like, "We're going to make you a squad leader." Now, if you don't want to be a squad leader in a Ranger battalion, I just got nothing for you. At the end of the day, that was a dream come true. So I put, again, plans on hold to do that. But eventually, it was time, and off to Lower Alabama I went. My first assignment out of flight school was to Panama. The scarcity of landing areas when conducting flight operations over the jungle really cause you to have some contingency planning, because if you make a wrong decision, that jungle will swallow you up. And I spent time searching for aircraft that had gone down. That's a really difficult thing to do. I learned a lot about flying from some very talented individuals in the organization. A guy by the name of Tim Kaminsky, Dave Barker, Tom Wagner. Some very talented guys. These guys were qualified in Hueys, and they knew how to fly. And they wanted to make sure that we newly minted UH-60 pilots weren't just reliant upon the Sikorsky escape lever. Plug for Sikorsky, that is the most badass helicopter I've ever flown. There is no doubt. We supported all kinds of operations while I was stationed there in Panama. We deployed to Honduras. A lot of things were going on in Nicaragua during that time frame. We provided support to victims of volcanoes in Colombia. And we supplied support to the DEA, Bolivian drug police down in Bolivia. One of the missions that made a distinct impact on me from a tactical standpoint was a raid that we decided we were going to carry out on the town of Santa Ana. And Santa Ana was known as the hub of drug lords in Bolivia, apparently. It was known, very much known, to be hostile to anybody that was in the anti-drug business. But it was the closest thing I'd come to armed conflict at that point in time. The reconnaissance for the mission was a single flyby on a fixed-wing aircraft by the DEA. Our mission planner was in the back of the aircraft, and he had very little time to sketch out a landing plan for what appeared to be a ground plan. The briefing consisted of little information from paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of the op order. We had 8 UH-60s and 1 Bolivian fixed-wing aircraft in support of the operation. The infill plan was to go to your assigned LZ, and we were landing all around this town, two aircraft to each LZ, and the fixed wing would go land at the airport. The ground plan then was for the, I won't call them assault forces, they were just ground forces, was to collapse into the center of the city of Santa Ana, police up any drug lords that were found to be en route, and then move to exfil at the airport. Our plan after infill was to go to the airport and go down to the APU, sit there and wait for the folks to collapse down to the airport. It was in such disarray, but the mayor of that town was really in charge. It was such disarray that you could see the smoke cloud, dust cloud kicking up as the ground forces moved back out to the airport, mixed with, I think, the entire population of Santa Ana. And they were, you couldn't tell who was who, friend, foe. It was the most chaotic thing that I had experienced in my entire 30 years. But it made a lasting impression. We took off from there. We got the command to crank, go ahead, take off. And it took 45 minutes flight back to where we based out of, and we never got a good head count. We had no idea whether we had left anybody in the LZ back there, and if it was known for sure death if they had. So that made a very lasting impression. I learned a lot about flying the machine. I learned very little about tactical operations. On my way to the 160th, I did a short stint with the 5th Special Forces Group, flight platoon. During that time, I met 2 individuals out of the 160th who made a direct impact on me. One was Larry Valiva. He was a CH-47 pilot in 2nd Battalion. The other one was a little-known individual, Little Bird IP, by the name of Randy Jones. Some of you guys may know Randy. Didn't take much convincing, and I was looking for a home. After passing the assessment, I started Green Platoon and was assigned another little-known IP by the name of Mike Durant. Mike was a taskmaster. We flew together every night, and he taught me the fundamentals of the way that organization works and reinforced the basics, the unit, and the mission. I knew I'd found a home at that point in time. It was the closest thing that I experienced camaraderie-wise and structural military organization since I'd left the Rangers. We had great leaders there, Ambassador Daley, General Brown, General Mangum, Mike Zonfarelli, Colonel Zonfarelli, Herb Rodriguez. I learned a lot from watching those guys. A key lesson I learned from Ambassador Daley was I was a punk for cutting off my mustache for my DA photo. And I thought it was a prudent move, but I haven't shaved it off since. At the end of the day, he also told me, hey, when we get back to Fort Campbell, I want you to come up to my headquarters and see me. And so I had no idea really why he wanted to do that. I mean, he already belittled me in public. He got up there and he showed me his DA photo from when he was in Vietnam, and he had a mustache that was much more significant than anything I had. And here he is. He made 3-star general and at best. We had a great mission. There was no doubt about that. We were well resourced, and most importantly, we had great people. Cliff Walcott, Jerry Izzo, Dan Gelada, Trey Williams, Donovan Briley, Mark Bergamo, Scott Richmond, Scott Hargis, Mike Zananti, and the list goes on. As Jerry Izzo recently said at a funeral, it was a collection of some of the greatest people I know. I had a lot of opportunity while in the 160th, under the tutelage of those I mentioned and others. I was able to advance to fill the roles of flight lead in both the assault and the attack aircraft. And my time in the unit was some of the most satisfying time in my career. I passed through Germany en route to my final assignment to determine that VIP flying was not for me, but it was a unique opportunity to fly the Pope and General Shinseki and General Crouch. I did learn a lot about how things work at the command, those upper command levels, and I'm quite certain that that those guys get no sleep at all. My final assignment, I think, can be summed up by saying we had opportunity to solve some very difficult problems through the use of conventional and unconventional approaches, and in the company of some very talented individuals, gentlemen like General Bontrager, Colonel Voorhees, Colonel Waters, my escort, Mike Wynn, Paul Price, Tony Rinder, Carl Schmidt, Ned Hubbard, Dan Gelada, and many others. The ISR mission mentioned in the video was a culmination of everything I had learned in the Army. By this point in my career, I was content not to let my proximity to the battle determine my importance to the mission. That was a comment made by General Garrison as a lesson learned. He also had another lesson learned that really stuck with me over the years was never pass up an opportunity to not talk on the radio. My time in the Rangers and as a flight lead helped me understand how we could best support our customers. Bar none, most important step that we could take was taking the time to know the individuals you were supporting. This is a people business, is what made us so effective. This was so in the Rangers and the 160th during this mission. It takes time, effort, and sacrifice, but it is the secret to success. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I enlisted in 1978, and there was no SOCOM at the time, and retired in 2009, and SOCOM was a powerhouse. We have gone far. After retiring, I started a company along with Scott Richmond and Mike Zananti, and we've tried to bring those lessons of people and tactics and operational experience to the company and the products and services that we provide to our customers and try as best we can to take care of our people. It's been an honor to serve this great nation in the presence of such fine individuals as those here and those mentioned. I am who I am today because of my experiences and leadership that was provided for me. My final comments are reserved for my family. To my parents, Sam and Sue Wood, I'd like to thank you for providing a loving household from which to grow and establish a solid foundation for the rest of my life. To my wife, Wendy, I love you and appreciate your love and understanding. I did not make life easy, on you. And I suspect the only reason you followed me was out of curiosity. To my daughters, Devin, Samantha, and Bailey, I love you. And again, I want to thank you for proving that you were actually listening to me by creating the Wood Family SOP. Thank you, and have an enjoyable evening.
Here to help CW5 Wood celebrate are his wife Wendy, daughters Devin and husband Joel Sharp, Samantha Ruge, and friend Megan Poller and Bailey Wood, parents Sam and Sue Wood, brother Robert and wife Cindy Wood, sister Laura and husband Kurt McNeely, and son Justin and brother-in-law Andrew Blanton. Would you all please stand and be recognized? Thank you. Our next inductee is Chief Warrant Officer 5, Thomas J. Janus, deceased. Please direct your attention to the screens.
CW5 Thomas J. Janus was born November 23, 1946, and raised in Chicago. He was drafted into the Army on February 7, 1966. He then became a military policeman and was assigned to South Korea, where he regularly traveled the countryside as a passenger in UH-1 Hueys. It wasn't long before he realized that aviation was his true passion in life. Ironically, while attending flight school at Fort Rucker, Alabama, Tom's aviation dreams nearly ended just as his career was beginning. Only 8 flight hours from graduation, he was diagnosed with a permanently grounding heart condition. Tom worked tirelessly to overturn the Army's medical decision, and his persistence proved to be no match for anyone standing in his way. He successfully obtained a medical waiver, allowing him to graduate from flight school, and became an Army aviator, a process that he would have to repeat annually for the next 29 years. On graduating from flight school in April of 1969, Tom was sent to Vietnam, where he flew hundreds of combat missions. He was awarded 16 air medals for his heroic contributions and also became an instructor pilot, IP, training dozens of aviators during the course of that year. Following Vietnam, Tom was first assigned as an IP to Fort Rucker, and in 1975 was assigned to Fort Clayton, Panama, where he continued IP duties in the UH-1 Huey. In further assignments, he became qualified in the ORV-1 Mohawk, served as an IP in Germany, and again returned to Fort Rucker. In November of 1987, Janus was handpicked to join a special mission unit in the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, SOCOM. During this service, Tom was selected to lead teams in various locations throughout the world as a mission commander and flight lead, supporting highly sensitive missions with far-reaching strategic effects. Following one delicate mission, his commander lauded Tom as, quote, "the finest warrant officer I have ever known. He has a contagious optimism that just simply permeates everyone around him. He's a technical wizard and a master tactician," end quote. Also well known for his innovative approach to problem solving, Tom Janus was selected to lead a team of Army aviators to begin developing unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, for a classified operational application, which was at the cutting edge of technology in the early 1990s. Tom and his team not only drove the integration of advanced and improved capabilities, they also determined the types of sensitive missions remotely piloted vehicles, RPVs, could perform, and developed the tactics, techniques, and procedures needed to successfully accomplish these missions. After retiring from the Army, Janus went on to become a contractor pilot for Northrop Grumman, conducting sensitive missions in South America. In Colombia, these missions included surveillance flights to locate key leaders and command nodules of Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, FARC, narcotics traffickers trying to overthrow the government. On February 13, 2003, while flying over the dense mountain jungles at 17,000 feet, Tom's single-engine Cessna Caravan, containing 3 other Americans and a Colombian Army sergeant crew chief, suffered a complete engine failure. It was only through Tom's remarkable skill at dead-sticking his aircraft that all on board survived the crash landing. Unfortunately, an elite unit of FARC rebels immediately surrounded the crash site. After safely exiting the aircraft and trying to protect his injured Colombian crew member, Tom was murdered by the FARC rebels. The remaining 3 Americans were captured and spent the next 5 years in captivity. Thousands of servicemen from across Special Operations Command units worked tirelessly in the memory of Tom Janus until, with the passionate involvement of Bill Brownfield, then U.S. Ambassador to Colombia, the 3 Americans were rescued on July 2nd, 2008. At the time of his death, CW-5 Janus had amassed more than 17 separate aircraft type ratings and more than 11,000 flight hours. Most importantly, he had taught and instructed hundreds of aviators the finer points of aviation skill, all the while being an exceptionally caring and compassionate leader who always set an unequivocally positive example for all with whom he served. Even in death, Tom continued to have an impact, as his sacrifice proved to be the pivotal incident bringing about changes in international anti-terrorism litigation that now allow for all victims of terrorism to unlock the assets of terrorist agencies. Thanks to the exhaustive efforts of U.S. Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama, Tom was recognized by having the U.S. Embassy Annex in Bogota, Colombia, named after him. In addition, a Special Mission Unit training facility bears his name, and he has been listed on the Memorial Court wall at a Special Mission Unit headquarters building. There is no doubt that the late CW-5 Tom Janus, retired, was the consummate, quiet professional who made remarkable contributions to Army aviation, the Army, and indeed to our nation. For his heroism, persistence, expertise, and leadership, please welcome CW-5 Tom Janus to the Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
Congratulations. Accepting the induction on behalf of their late father, our sons CW4 Michael Janus and CW4 retired Chris Janus, and their Hall of Fame escort, General retired Dick Cody.
Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you. My knees are shaking. I'm proud to be here. But more importantly, I'm humbled. Before you, the Janus family represents 70 years of aviation service to this country. Something that, speaking for myself and probably for my brother, have no regrets about. Most of my father's career is doing special stuff that personally I don't have the security clearance to talk about anymore. The video did a great job talking about it. And instead of just standing up here and talking about, things we did at home, I'd like to talk about something a little more personal, something that all of us in the room share with my father, and that's time. For all of us in this room, within the earshot of my voice, time is finite. We start time when we're born. We transcend our life through time, gaining experience, education, friendships, building careers. And at some point, out of our control, our time stops. We have no control over when it starts, and we can't control when it stops. As we progress that time, we think time speeds up sometimes, and it slows down sometimes based on our experiences or looking back and recalling memories in time. If my father were speaking today, he would want to impart some words of wisdom. And the only wisdom I can impart with reference to time and all of us together here is that the only factor that we control in time is how we use it, how we interact with people that we share time with when we're in our formative early years in education, if we're in our professional careers, be it business or wearing a military uniform, how we share time with our peers and our colleagues determines, when our time ends, how we're remembered. My family didn't recommend my father for this honor. We did not have any say in this honor. My brother and I humbly stand before you accepting this honor in place of my father, an honor that he deserves and we are appreciative for. But my father was the master of time management. He used his time wisely. In his spare time, he spent it with his family. In his professional time, he constantly sought self-improvement. He challenged himself. He made his life better, and he made the lives of his peers better by contributing to an organization, by team building. So if you wear a uniform and it's got 4 stars on it, or you're my almost 16-year-old granddaughter in school learning about life, time is important. How you spend it with your peers, where you're at along your lifestyle, your time frame. The only thing that matters is at the end of your time, the true measure of your worth to society is how your peers thought of you. And I think it's pretty evident that my father's peers thought very highly of him. I appreciate this honor. I'd like to give thanks to a couple people in the room. First and foremost is General Cody. General Cody and my father served together. My father loved his time serving with General Cody. Unfortunately, my father's time in the military ended and he retired. He stopped wearing a uniform, but he contributed and spent his time doing other things in support of our country. When my father's time ended, he was out of the military. There was a lot going on in the world in 2003, a war in Afghanistan, a soon-to-be war in Iraq. General Cody stopped everything that he was doing. I'm sure he was very busy. He stopped everything. He was instrumental in the repatriation of my father back to us, our family, as well as allowing us to say goodbye to my father in Arlington. Our family will never forget General Cody, a leader, a hero, and a type of person that continues to serve today, to stand by a fallen family and take care of their family in their time of need. Thank you, sir. I brought a friend with me today. Major Morgan, Tim Morgan, him and I go way back. I started my career as early as a W-2, and he was a W-2. I met this man. I met his beautiful wife, his family, and I thought, man, that's an inspiration. That's what I want. I met my wife. I got married. I never forgot about Tim Morgan. I called Tim Morgan when I got back to the States upon hearing about my father. He's the first person I called because I needed to talk to somebody. Tim said, "What do you need?" I said, "I don't know." The next time I saw my buddy Tim was standing next to me at Arlington saying goodbye to my father. Didn't even get to say hi to him there, caught up in the emotion of the event. I look over, and there's my buddy, standing there with my family, standing there supporting me, sharing time with me. Never gonna forget that, buddy. You were there at my lowest low. I had to have you here for my highest high. Thank you. And the last person I'd like to thank, and I'd like to disclose a little bit of personal information about my father, Tom Janus. Some of you have not heard a word I've said while I'm standing up here, and that's fine. I understand that. All you're doing is looking at the picture of my father. You're probably looking at my brother, and you're wondering, he looks nothing like his father. I don't understand this. What's going on here? And I'm a Kiowa Warrior guy, so I was trained by the Army very well at picking up on subtle cues. And when I talk to people, especially when my brother and I are together, I sense this quite often. So my uncle and my aunt are here. I brought them here for support, and they can give you all the information about my father. They've known my father longer than I've known my father. But something that most people don't know in this room is that Tom and Judith Janus had 4 children. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings of Tom and Judith Janus. What most people don't know is of the 4 siblings of Tom Janus, he has 2 biological children. Myself and my sister were in an adoption agency, and we needed a home. This man came with his beautiful wife, opened his heart, opened his home, gave me a last name, and I am forever appreciative and thankful of that. I may not have started my time as a Janus, but I'm so grateful and humbled to be ending it as a Janus. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your being here and sharing this time with my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. You're still his favorite. You are. Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Janus, and I truly do stand before you tonight a grasshopper among giants, one of them being my dad. There's not enough time to thank everybody. General Cody, absolutely. General Paul Bontrager, Janus Arena, and the entire Quad A organization. Thank you so much for helping us get this prestigious honor for our father. On behalf of the Janus family. Tom's wife, our mother Judith, wishes she could be here. I have her notes. She's recovering at home from an injury, unable to travel, but from the bottom of her heart, she thanks you as well. Our brother Jonathan, our third brother, he's at home with a newborn, so unfortunately he can't be here, and our sister Greer is watching down along with our father Tom in spirit. So on behalf of Judith, the children, and myself, I'd like to share a few things with you that you may not know about Tom Janus. If you strip away the awards, the commendations, and the praise, at the heart of who this man was he was kind. He was kind and he was authentic. He loved his God, he loved his family, he loved his country, he loved to smile, and he always found a reason to do it. He truly did. Always optimistic. If you worked with Tom Janus, you might have thought this was impossible to maintain, but I can assure you, even at home, we saw it. It was truly who he was. He saw the positive in everything. And he had a few Tom Janus isms. Some things he learned along the way, some were actually his own, and I want to share a few of them with you tonight. Have a plan, but don't fall in love with the plan. Your attitude determines your altitude in life. To be fit is to be ready, both mentally and physically fit. And this was a big one. no matter where you find yourself in life, no matter where it is, do your best to try to make it a little bit better. So when you combine authenticity with audacity and temper it with that kindness, you get the spirit of Tom Janus. An ordinary individual like us, but who accomplished extraordinary things. So tonight we celebrate his induction into the select group of extraordinary individuals. We want to thank you all again for being here, and I do believe you will agree with me that Tom Janus left Army Aviation a little bit better than the way he found it. Thank you all so much.
Here to help the Janus family celebrate are Mike's son, Ethan, daughters Luna and Charlotte, Chris's stepson and his wife, Jeremy and Laura Kepner, Chris's granddaughter and her mom, Madison Kepner and Mrs. Courtney Newell, Mike and Chris's aunt and uncle, Jeff and Julie Bakar, and their daughter, Kathy Lewis, family friends, Major Retired Tim and Audrey Morgan, former POW Keith Stansel and fiancée Rebecca Kloss. Would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Our final inductee for this evening is Lieutenant Colonel James A. Scott III, deceased. Please direct your attention to the screens.
Lieutenant Colonel James A. Scott III was born on August 5th, 1938, in the U.S. Canal Zone, Colón, Panama. The son and older brother of West Point graduates, he graduated from the United States Military Academy with a class of 1961 and was commissioned a second lieutenant of Field Artillery. He became airborne and Ranger qualified and completed flight school at Fort Rucker in 1963. By 1966, then Captain Scott was among the Army's youngest and most decorated aviators and was selected as the Quad A Army Aviator of the Year. He was specifically recognized for his exploits flying the O-1 Bird Dog during hundreds of missions at treetop level in the vicinity of Tuiwa, Vietnam. His citation states that, quote, Captain Scott possessed and displayed an uncanny ability to bring to bear supporting fire on the Viet Cong, end quote. On his second tour of Vietnam, from 1967 to 1968, he frequently conducted air mobile and air assault operations for 4th Infantry Division, Special Forces, and 23rd Army of the Republic of Vietnam Division. While on an air assault mission in 1968 during the Tet Offensive, his helicopter was struck multiple times and he was wounded. Undeterred, he returned to base camp, which was also under attack. Despite incoming mortar fire, he rearmed, refueled, and returned to lead his aerial fire team until his gunship was hit by anti-aircraft fire, damaging the tail rotor control cables. He continued to engage enemy ground forces until he could no longer maintain anti-torque control, and then successfully executed an emergency landing. For extraordinary heroism in action, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, our nation's second highest award for valor. Less than 2 months later, after recovering from his wounds, he also earned the Silver Star for gallantry as lead gunship and fire team leader who deliberately drew enemy fire by placing his aircraft between enemy positions and a medical evacuation aircraft. When the rescue medevac was unable to complete the mission, he performed the task with his own heavily laden gunship, evacuated the wounded himself, and then provided ammunition resupply to the ground forces until his aircraft was again hit by enemy fire and his co-pilot was seriously wounded. His additional combat awards include 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 28 Air Medals, 2 Bronze Stars, and 2 Purple Hearts. At Fort Rucker from December 1968 to July 1970, first as a project officer, Doctrine Development, Department of Tactics, and then as a company commander, Scott used his extensive combat experience to help convince the Army to officially recognize Army aviation for what it was, in fact, a true combat branch of the combined arms team. Apart from his combat experience, his most rewarding assignment was a 3-year tour as a tactical officer for Company E4 at the U.S. Army Military Academy at West Point, where he molded young cadets into the next generation of American warrior leaders. His counseling, guidance, and leadership resulted in his company's superb performance across a wide variety of athletic endeavors, intercollegiate, intramural, club, and the highest academic performance of all 36 cadet companies. His hallmark was a remarkable ability to lead from the front by force of his own strong personal example. He ended his military career in September 1980 as 6th Battalion Commander, 1st Aviation Brigade at the U.S. Army Aviation Center, Fort Rucker, Alabama. After a second career in investment banking, Jim and his wife of over 60 years, Kelly, spent 30 years growing organic fruits, vegetables, meats, and grandkids in North Georgia. In 2019, he was inducted to the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, less than a year ago, Jim succumbed to an almost 3-decade struggle with Agent Orange-related complications and died on August 18, 2022. Lieutenant Colonel Scott had a tremendous impact on generations of Army leaders, far exceeding his 20 years of Army service. A highly decorated warrior and inspirational leader, please welcome to the Army Aviation Hall of Fame the late Lieutenant Colonel James A. Scott III.
Congratulations. Accepting on her late husband's induction is Mrs. Kelly B. Scott and her Hall of Fame escort, Brigadier General retired Rod Wolf.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce you to Greg Parlier, retired colonel, class of 1974 USMA, and he's going to speak to you tonight from our family. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this honor, Kelly. First and foremost, if Jim were here tonight, he'd thank his amazing wife of 61 years, Kelly Blair Scott, and their wonderful family, 4 children and their spouses, 6 grandchildren, and so far, 2 great-grandchildren. He would express heartfelt gratitude to Quad A, the Hall of Fame trustees and selection committee, to Janice Arena, John Fishback, and all those behind the scenes. Jim would appreciate the presence tonight of his former West Point cadets from Company E4. fellow pilots from the 92nd Assault Helicopter Company, and deep gratitude for his West Point classmates, class of 1961, second to none. He would express great honor to share this recognition with fellow distinguished aviators Tom Janus and Stanley Wood. And pride, with perhaps a twist of irony, to join his former Fort Rucker superiors in the hall, Generals Doc Bonson, Carl McNair, Bob Williams, and James Merriman. He and Kelly are especially grateful to Jim's professional colleague, retirement neighbor, good friend, and Hall of Fame recipient, General Rod Wolf, who was Kelly's escort for Jim's induction tonight. For certain, young Captain Jim Scott was an accomplished, heroic combat pilot, and his contributions to Army aviation throughout his career were significant. The video also mentioned that Jim's leadership was his defining quality, and his influence will be felt for years to come. These are bold assertions. So on behalf of my E4 company mates, we offer a few thoughts tonight on Jim's lifelong leadership and his legacy. During his years as our TAC, he directly supervised about 150 cadets spanning the classes of 1973 through 77. His challenge was to instill discipline within us while at the same time inspiring our future service. He did this not by telling us what we must do, but rather showing us by his example. His genius was motivating us to exceed even our own expectations. Some of you might recall that great historical novel of military leadership, Once an Eagle, by Anton Meyer. Major Jim Scott was our Sam Damon, even before we even knew who Damon was. One of us who came up through the Armored Cav ranks to become a 3-star reflected many of our sentiments when he recently wrote Jim, "I would not have made it through West Point had it not been for you." In retrospect, he and Kelly were the perfect Army team for all of us and our future wives when we needed their example most. Later, Jim also commanded a Pershing missile unit in Europe during the height of the Cold War before concluding his Army career as battalion commander at Fort Rucker, as you saw. Upon retiring, Jim charted new territory, forming an investment banking firm in Colorado. Under his leadership as vice president, then president, and chairman of the board, the firm rapidly expanded across the United States with order of magnitude growth. 10 years later, embarking yet again on new frontiers, the Scotts purchased 85 acres in northeastern Georgia, where Jim led the effort to obtain USDA certification for a new livestock industry. He was elected president of the Georgia Emu Association in 1992. For 3 decades, the Scotts managed their Fancy Feathers farm, and in 1966, he was appointed director for the Southern Family Farms Co-op. All of these are amazing accomplishments, yet Jim would not have defined his legacy by them. Rather, he would measure his personal success by our future contributions to our nation and of those he led and inspired as our TAC half a century ago. So in his eyes, his legacy would be our future success. So what is Jim's legacy? Like our TAC, many of us would become combat veterans, several as commanders across our Army, including a handful of general officers and senior executives on the Joint Staff. We became leaders in American industry, executives in finance, banking, and energy, dentists and doctors, including chief of radiology at Letterman, chief of orthopedic surgery at Walter Reed, award-winning authors and a distinguished military historian, professors at West Point, the Army War College, major research universities, including a dean of engineering school, accomplished leaders in our scientific and engineering communities, among them an astronaut candidate, presidents of our national and international professional societies, a chief judge of the Federal Court of Appeals in Washington, and a senator from Montana. And so, we hope we made our TAC proud. Eventually, we'll all find out. So. His lasting impact can be found in our countless email messages and letters to him. When you read them, there are a few words that recur in these letters, almost every single one. Respect, admire, esteem, hero, and in several the word revere, which we normally reserve for our parents. Upon Jim's passing last August, a couple observations speak for us all. One of us wrote to Kelly, "A genuine American hero has passed." And another, "I'd like to think I've passed his lessons on to my son." George Andrews, class 75, who is here tonight, captured all of our feelings condensed in his simple phrase: Jim Scott was the officer we all wanted to be. A month and a half from now, on Monday morning, the 12th of June, we'll escort his mortal remains to final rest at West Point, a place that symbolizes more than any other those hallowed words that this great American lived by: duty, honor, country. A courageous Army aviator, a remarkable, inspirational leader with an enduring legacy. May God rest his immortal soul. On behalf of Jim and Kelly and their entire Scott family, we'll be forever grateful for this unforgettable tribute and thank all of you for your gracious presence here this evening.
Here to celebrate with Kelly are their daughters, Shell Scott and Lacey Scott Wyatt, and sons Rusty and Jay, Jay's wife, Kathy, Jay's daughters, Catherine Scott and Alicia Ogle, and Lacey's son, BC Biltus. Would you please stand to be recognized? Also, we have with us this evening members of Lieutenant Colonel Scott's 1961 class at West Point, and some of his former cadets from Company E4 and a fellow pilots from the 92nd Assault Helicopter Company. Would you please stand to be recognized as well? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can well imagine, there are many people that we owe thanks to for helping the Army Aviation Hall of Fame salute our 2023 class of inductees. First, we'd like to thank John Fishbeck, our video producer, for all of his coordination and support. The whole Quad A team, especially Janice Arena, who takes such great care of our awardees and Hall of Fame inductees. Thank you all. I would like to also thank you for your attendance this evening, for your continued outstanding support of the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. Be sure to take your wine glass with you. It's something yours to keep, and if you choose, someone may take the floral center arrangements as well. On behalf of all of its members, you have our deepest gratitude and your support and recognition. Please mark your calendars for Thursday night, April 25th, 2024, in Denver for our 50th anniversary of our first Hall of Fame ceremony in 1974. I ask all of this evening's inductees, their families, friends, and escorts to remain in the vicinity for a few minutes so we may take some photos with the portraits. Meanwhile, let's give the Hall of Fame class of 2023 one final round of applause.